we're back, Raz.
Hey.
We won't say what episode because we're just here again, but super excited today. I'm wearing my merch as well. Don't forget, I owe you a shirt.
You owe me, and
Yeah.
I think next time
Remind
bring
me.
it, not
I
just
will.
owe it to me.
Super excited today. I'm a little nervous, actually, which is the first time, but I'll let you explain why I'm a little nervous.
Why are you a little nervous?
Because it's Alex.
Alex? You're nervous because Alex is a
What a
nice
pleasure.
Alex is a nice guy.
It's not that. I feel like the professional's at the table, and I'm not, but that's why. But it's exciting.
Before I'm going to do my opener
Yeah.
and tell everyone about Alex, when I met Alex, he was the husband of the teacher of my daughter.
That was my claim to fame.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's how you
Okay.
know each other?
That's
Yeah.
what I'm
So-
famous for.
Oh, nice.
So I'm not like in the creator or media domain. So I felt like, how could I not know Nas Daily?
Yeah.
And when I asked Christine, which is Alex's wife, and I said, "What's your husband is doing?" He's doing like great stuff. You should meet him. And then I said, "Okay, let's have a coffee." No,
Yeah, that's how it started.
that's how it started.
I don't think it was. I wasn't expecting at that time that a year later I'd be on your podcast.
Yeah,
It shows how the world works. It's
Little
amazing.
did
Me
you know.
too. Me too. I didn't think about it, but perception sometimes, reality.
Yeah,
So Alex Dwek, as I said right, yeah?
you said it right.
Yes. Okay. So COO of Nas company. Nas is focused on building innovation, education, and community product to create through a Nas IO and Nas Academy, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then we have an amazing background. Alex, you did so many things from Grab to Uber, different countries, different customers, different markets, and you build your strategy. You're a very humble guy. This is the way I see it. But for me, and Nuseir, sorry for saying that, he's the brain behind Nas company. I'm also excited to have you today. And we're gonna speak about few stuff that gonna enlighten and inspire our audience. How I would like to say, simple people. Yeah, we don't have to be superstars. We don't have to be the ones that changing the world. We just need to execute. But we're gonna start. Tell us how you arrived to Singapore.
Yeah. First of all, guys, thank you so much for having me. It's
Thank
great
you.
to be here.
Yeah.
I moved to Singapore in January 2016, so almost 9 years ago. Like many people who come here, it was never with the intention of being here 9 years later.
Yeah.
I came here for a job assignment with my company in London. It was a 2-year contract, and the goal was to come, experience and learn about Southeast Asia, experience and learn how to build new markets, grow products in new markets where a lot of infrastructure doesn't already exist, and then go back and move on in my career and take those learnings somewhere else. But like many people, that's not what happens, right? I came here, I got to understand and appreciate more the tech scene of Southeast Asia, the tremendous change, the constant things that are popping up in this region. And I realized that my job wasn't done. After 6 months with my company, which was in management consulting, I realized that I didn't want to be an advisor to the people who were building. I wanted to be a builder. And that is when I decided to make that change and get into the world of tech in Southeast Asia. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So it was an accidental, I would say, journey.
Yeah.
But I would say that through the 9 years, there were very critical junctures to make decisions for my career and also for growth. I'm happy to talk about those more on this podcast.
Yeah.
And that kind of led me to the world of content creation and media today.
Yeah. And I guess you call it home now. I mean, similar situation me in Hong Kong. I was supposed to go for a year, and then I've been in Asia ever since. Like, what keeps you here?
Yeah.
Is it just that this is still the epicenter for all the stuff you're working on?
It's really interesting in my different roles since I've been here. So I started in management consulting. I worked at Uber in Southeast Asia, based out of Singapore. Then I went to Grab, and I was covering the region. And then I was with Nas. So I've been in different companies. And what's interesting is that each company had a different center of gravity. So Grab was very much Southeast Asia built, focus on Southeast Asia. Uber was a Silicon Valley tech company with a regional office.
Yeah.
Nas is actually global headquarters in Singapore, but operates globally. So the reason to stay here hasn't always been because my customers are in Singapore or here. I think there are a few things that happened in my career that has constantly kept me motivated to be here. I think number one was my first job here, I was working entirely with Singaporeans, which allowed me to really gain an appreciation and understanding of the country, of the culture, and to embed myself more within that. Alongside that, I had the fortune and privilege to be able to also live, I would say, a lot more integrated with Singaporeans. So living in an HDB, in government housing and others allowed me to really, not just be with a group of people who are maybe coming into Singapore for 2 years and then leaving, but actually being with people who are national, who are citizens and who are making their life here. And then I think the third part has been being in an environment and ecosystem that is constantly growing. And when you're in a growing environment, opportunities arise. And this is one of the big learnings I've had in my career so far, which is you want to surround yourself and be in environments and industries that are growing. Because when there's growth, opportunities always pop up. Even if it's not in your role that you're doing at that point, there are always interesting things happening. And I think that's one of the big motivators that's kept me here.
Yeah. So let's dig into Nas a little bit. I'll be the first to kind of probably be more pedestrian here. Like I know Nas Daily.
Yeah.
And of course I watch it and tune it, especially when he was bouncing around Southeast Asia. I've seen him at a couple of events. But you're wearing a shirt that's Nas Company.
Yes.
Which I'll admit that I didn't quite get everything until I had watched the video on your site, on the company site the other day, where Nas he's sitting in the chair explaining the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I haven't kept up. Like, I think a lot of people haven't kept up when they're not always watching you. So can you give like a Reader's Digest version of what's happened in Nas Company? And also, like, I think it's also news to some people that it's headquartered here.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to kind of like dig into that a little bit and get everybody on the same page, because I think it's pretty exciting, especially since it is headquartered here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't know our story. I think most people who are listening or watching would know the videos.
Yeah.
Because it's been on social media since 2016, so it's been 8 years. So for everyone's background, we started as a social media channel. We were content creators. So we would just make videos. The whole concept of Nas Daily was 1-minute videos every day on Facebook. And it happened for 1,000 straight days. At the end of the 1,000 days, we got a lot of viewers, a lot of followers. We had about 15 million followers. We were getting millions of views. And for many people listening or watching, you'd be like, wow, you have something amazing. But the reality was that if you're based outside of the US and you're a content creator, it's actually really hard to build a business on top of just a Facebook channel. Sure. And so at that point, we realized that if we wanted to take the impact that we had, we've been always very mission-centric. We've always been about positive content, about breaking down barriers. Our mission statement is bringing people together. We realized that we couldn't just make content and expect to build a big company. We had to build a business around that brand. And that's where the Nas Company came about. So it came about in 2020, and it came about in Singapore for a few reasons. So first of all, when Nuseir Nas finished his journey, he didn't end up in Singapore. He ended up more in sort of Europe, Middle East, actually in Israel. Yeah. And what he found was that whilst that was where he was from, it was really hard to build an international business there for content creation and media. The kind of people we wanted to hire were from all over the world. And when you want to hire people all over the world, you need visas, right? Yeah. You need a place also which is close to where your biggest audiences are. For us, we had an audience in America, but we had a huge audience in the APAC region. So with all those factors, it made sense to come to Singapore. One of the easiest places to set up a company, but also one of the regions with the highest consumption of social media and also of new products. I think that's why the tech ecosystem has grown here. So that was the reason why we came here. And the company itself, just in a nutshell, has many different facets. There's education, Nas Academy, there's technology, Nas.io. We have physical events, Nas Summit, one of which we have here in Singapore. Yeah. And that ecosystem, the idea is that it builds on top of the media. So the media lets you know that we exist, and the products help you build a deeper connection to what we do and make money at the same time.
Got it. And I guess the part of that, is it's to help everybody else make money with their own community or media, if I understand that correctly.
So let's talk about that. That's like a big issue that I care about.
That's like the Nas.io part of it.
That's
which is the new thing to me. That's why I'm asking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's highly relevant for you guys as well as podcasters. So, the big realization we had when I told you in 2020 was that we had a lot of followers, but we couldn't really make reliable revenue. It's actually got a whole lot worse because since 2020, we've had the rise of short form video like TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. And what it has done is create a revolution. And that revolution has allowed anyone to come onto the internet without a following, make a really interesting, exciting piece of content, and the algorithm helps it get discovered.
Yeah.
So a content creator doesn't need to have 1 million subscribers or followers anymore. It can use the algorithm to get 1 million views. On the one hand, it means anyone can become a content creator. That's amazing. But on the other hand, a video you can get 1 million views, the second video you can get 1,000 views. And so this problem has only got worse. And that's why we do focus. Our whole reason of existing with our technology was that we need to help other people figure out how to make money, and they don't need to have 10 million followers, right? They can actually do this with just 1,000 followers, 1,000 true fans. So if I take you guys, I'm sure you think about this, right? Like, what is your business model? Yes, for now, you may be saying, look, we want attention. We want views. We want people to appreciate and like our podcast. But I don't know, have you guys been thinking about how you make money, or is that a longer term thing?
It's a good.
Yeah, we didn't think about it in the beginning. Because I think part of our journey is, first of all, to study from people like you. And not just us, everyone, the audience. After you have a good success, I think, based on my experience, the money might gonna come. Yeah? So we have still a road to think about monetization.
Yeah, but it's a good question because I think you have to pay for also the work we're doing.
Yeah.
There's paying for it, which I think is part of what you are talking about. There's the other thing of how can I monetize the community, or how do you do events? So I definitely think we think about it. I think we're in the early stages of I kind of call it the flywheel. We just want to get the flywheel moving. Because personally, I think you've gotten some business through it.
Yeah.
My network's grown a lot because of it. But yeah, there's that second order, what do we do? And I'm sure there's people that are more only doing what we're doing. They have no other thing. And then they're really trying to figure that out. I would imagine the platform is, one of the first places they should go look to think about this.
So this is a great point, and I think you've summed up really nicely, which is that I think if you're starting as a content creator today, the focus should be, in the same way as in tech, it's about finding your product market fit.
Yeah.
If you're worried about how you're going to make money off your audience or off brand deals, it's really hard to focus on product market fit and making money.
Yeah.
So I think your approach totally makes sense, and it's how I see a lot of successful creators work. Focus on the content. But there does come a point where, let's just say, as your podcast continues to be successful, you continue to grow, and you're like, should I do this full time or not? The decision making will be, well, can I pay the bills?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we think about monetization for content creators, we don't think about how does someone make $1 million. We think about how do they pay the bills? And that's the question. So I think that there is a tipping point. Some people reach it earlier because they decide, hey, I'm just going to do this. The only way I can do this is if I commit.
Yeah.
And then you have to think about it earlier. But for Nas.io, which is our monetization software, it is actually for a more established creators. So it would be someone who has 50,000 or 100,000 followers, and then it's like, okay, now I've got product market fit. What do I do next?
What do I do with it?
Yeah.
And then you have Nas.io to assist you with
Yes,
that one.
and then Nas.io is the way to accept payments, host events, run memberships, all different ways. We have 6 different ways you can make money, essentially.
Yeah.
And there are many more ways. Our prediction is that in the next 3, 4, 5 years, there are going to be many types of experiences that content creators can build and then offer their audience. And we want to be the Shopify for online communities and come up with lots of different ways.
Yeah, move with the times.
Correct.
But keep being their platform to do
Correct.
that.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
So I think that's the direction we're going with the products. But I think that what's been really interesting for me on a personal note is when I decided to join Nas company, it was a controversial decision. What I mean by that,
click on that. I want to hear more.
So 2020 was an interesting year in this world, because if you talk to many successful YouTubers today, they will tell you that in 2019, early 2020, they almost gave up because they were growing very slowly. and they were not necessarily finding there were many ways to make money. Influencer marketing was still developing. And so it was hard being a creator, much harder than today. And in 2020, there was this revolution, which was that everyone was stuck at home. And what were they doing? They were consuming content. And so all these YouTubers that already existed got a ton more viewers. And then brands started to focus more on these online creators for their marketing. And it just went from there.
Yeah.
So in 2020, it was the start of this. And of course, those in the know probably knew that this has already changed fundamentally. But I think if you're in the mainstream tech environment in Singapore, it wasn't so certain, right? I don't think that the world of
too
content
small
creation,
of a market to probably realize what was happening, right?
You know, our focus in Southeast Asia, especially with consumer, has been a lot of e-commerce, right?
Yeah.
I was in ride sharing and food delivery and all this. This has been an area that has been booming maybe since 2015, 16. So I was going from possibly the most successful Southeast Asian startup, Grab, and I was going to a company that had no funding, that was started by a content creator, which many perceived as just a guy with a camera. And they were like, and I had a kid on the way, by the way. And they were like, what are you doing?
Can I ask, how did you even meet? Like,
So
because you guys weren't friends before.
No, we didn't know each other.
So how did you even bump into this decision?
So I think this is the thing about Singapore. Singapore is a great place to be in tech because everyone is 1 or 2 degrees of separation.
The density is impressive. Right?
It's actually, the density is impressive. It's not actually, when I lived in the UK before, and I would say that to meet founders, you had to be quite connected to be able to get an intro. It wasn't that anyone would just open their content book. I think in Singapore, the ecosystem is quite friendly and open, and it is not impossible to meet people. So far still, which is a good thing, and I hope it continues. We met actually because my wife took one of the first Nas Academy classes.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And she became friends with Nuseir's partner at the time, and they hosted an event, and she's like, can you be my +1? So it was not at all like, let me go into this space. It started like that, and then we started talking about the future. You know, we're like, what is happening in the world of tech and media? And there was a really interesting conversation because when I joined Grab and Uber, I joined because I believed that the idea in Southeast Asia that anyone with a motorbike could build a business was just incredible.
Yeah.
And the idea that, yes, it started with transportation, but there were going to be 5, 6 other ways that a guy with a motorbike or a woman with a motorbike could make money. And what similarly excited me was that with the internet and with the tools of social media, there were going to be a whole new category of businesses, the business of one. And just like with enterprises, there was like tons of software being built for enterprises. The hypothesis was that there's going to have to be tons of software and things to support the business of one. And what's great about the business of one is that you don't need to live in San Francisco or New York or London.
Anywhere.
You could live anywhere. You could live in a 3rd tier city in Indonesia.
City.
You can live in Ho Chi Minh. You can live in India. And you can be just as successful. And that blew my mind. And that idea drew me to working at Nas. So I think a lesson I would give to people watching is that a lot of people, when they focus on their career, focus on, is this the perfect company that is going to be a unicorn? That is really hard to predict.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what information you have in front of you. There are so many factors that are outside of your control. But I think if you look at the industry, what you can say is, do I believe or I bet on the industry as a whole? And if I do, I will take a bet on the company. But even if the company is wrong,
I'm in the right spot.
I'm in the right spot. I'm learning about the industry. I'm going to meet a lot of great people. And if this, worst case doesn't work out, I can take all my learnings and I can do something else in the industry because I believe the industry is something. And I took that approach. I think so far I've been happy with the company as well. So I'm still here. It's 4 years almost. Yeah. But I think that for others, it's a different kind of risk, right? Because then you're not, the company will die. Therefore, it was a bad decision. Yeah. I think if you're optimistic, then it can be a long-term great decision.
I want to double click on that because I think many people, they have like a misconception of how can I move from a big company, big enterprise, working with lots of people, and then go to a small company to have the same influence. How can I bring my stability? Some people think about stability, and you made the decision. What was the moment you said, I don't care about if it's a small or big company? What was it? Take us to this moment.
That was actually through my experience at Grab. So when I started at Grab, I was a part of a small team that launched food delivery in Southeast Asia. So my job was to go to Vietnam with a small team and build food delivery. And at that point, we had no restaurants, we had no drivers, like it was nothing. And what I realized, after a year, we hit product market fit, we grew really large, we had a big team, and then I went to Indonesia and helped grow the business there. And I think what I learned through that period was actually a lot about myself. I loved that chaotic early period where I had no team. So I went from, again, having a big team before to having no team. And then I grew a massive team at Grab, and then at Nas I had a small team again, or no team actually at the beginning. And I loved those early days. I loved the building side. I loved the figuring out the problems. That was what really motivated me. Grab Food became successful, and it became a really big company. And my team alone was almost 1,000 people. So I went from being the guy on my own to the guy having to deal with a big team. And on the one hand, people build their whole career on having a team of hundreds of people. Sure. But I actually found that my focus changed. So instead of building the business, I spent a lot of time on people issues, like HR. I spent a lot of time on internal stakeholder management. We're spending a lot of money as a business. So of course, the leadership of the whole company is very focused. So you spend a lot of time in those kind of meetings, a lot of time preparing for board meetings. So I felt I was spending less and less time with the business. So Raz, to your question, I said, if I really enjoy the building part, then I need to be in an environment where I can do that. And I think smaller companies are a better fit for that. Now, my ego had to take a check because really, you have your team does everything for you.
1,000 people, man.
You have your direct reports. You say you have an idea, people implement it, and then you go into this early company. At the beginning, you are literally writing the deck, writing the contract. You're doing everything by yourself. It's very humbling, but I really enjoyed it, so I didn't mind, and I would do it again. So that was really a journey of understanding what I like, and also reflecting that yes, in your network, there are periods where your clout can be greater or less, depending on what people perceive your influence is in your job. Of course, when I left Grab and I went to this Nas company, my perceived influence at the beginning was maybe lower, but I didn't really care because I think that in the end, that's just perception. And what's really going to matter in your career over a longer period is not what people think of you, it's your skills, it's what you do. Yeah. Because that can come and go. Company's reputation can get trashed, But what your skills that you learn, it's really hard to take that away. So that was how I focused. Was I right? Was I wrong? Maybe I probably would have earned more money at Grab.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. But I'm very happy with the decision.
So there's two things you talked about in careers. One, when you jumped in, you said, hey, I'm going to be in the right area. Yeah. Maybe I didn't pick the right horse, but I'm on the right track. Yes. Kind of what you're saying. This other one is you're saying, hey, no matter what's happened, I've done X, Y, and Z that I didn't get to do at Grab. I've expanded my periphery of things you know how to do. So this kind of gets to the heart of the term of the podcast, the generalist. So the question to you is is the concept of a generalist been in your repertoire as a career thing? Do you just realize it now? Because you've done lots of different things, from Grab to Uber to consultant to now. Is that how you've thought about building this career? And what do you think about the whole concept of generalist versus specialist when it comes to careers?
So I am such a big believer in the generalist career mindset and career trajectory. I wholeheartedly believe in it, and I am a generalist.
And for the record, everybody, this is not, we didn't pay him for this plug.
No. Absolutely.
We see it in what you do. Yeah.
Completely. And if I look at my last role, when I was a launcher, what the hell does that even mean? A launcher. It just means can I swear, by the way? Okay. Get shit done. Yeah. It just means put someone in a room who can get shit done. Yeah. There is no specialist skill set in really building a market in food delivery in Vietnam. No one else has done it before. Yeah. So you just need someone who can figure it out. And what I learned was that I was a crappy specialist. When I started in consulting and accountancy, I was not good at my job. And I think that I realized why was because it was just the way that I think and the way that I operate. I think I have actually quite a short attention span. And so I like sort of solving specific problems in lots of different areas, right? And I had an ability to be able to see how it all fits together. So it suited me. But if you asked me to become a product manager, which I believe you need a lot of, if you become a very specialist, you become really successful as a specialist and a product manager, or maybe in engineering, I would fail. Now, the reality with this, and I think this is why it's great you're doing this podcast, if you follow job descriptions, then you will come to the conclusion that being a generalist is terrible, because very rarely are there jobs advertised for generalists. Jobs are always so specific. They need this person with this number of years experience in this field. Is it sales? Is it product? Is it engineering? So a trade-off to being a generalist is that you may need to find your job in unorthodox ways. I wrote a post on LinkedIn about this, and I said, I have never, ever, ever got a job through LinkedIn. I have like 100% rejection rate for any job that I've applied for on LinkedIn.
Same.
And
no replies.
No replies, And the irony is that actually with Grab, I had applied a few years before and I got rejected through the traditional method. But then when I went through the non-traditional method, I ended up being successful there. So I think as a generalist, you have to accept that people may not know they're looking for your skills. So my advice to other generalists is don't be disheartened by that. There are companies that need your skills. Actually, many companies. But you may need to find them and be able to match what you can do with what they need. That's my biggest learning. But I think that the generalist skill set is very underrated.
Yeah, and I think it's like because you got 3 kids, I got 3. You now have 3.
I now have 3.
Yeah,
okay,
wow.
so we can.
It's a good table.
It's a group of 3. Mine are older than all of yours, I think. So, which means I don't know what I'm doing. And what I've been trying to tell my kids is, throw out any preconceived notions that you're hearing in school, and that, like you said, when you read a job description or you think how the market works, and realize that you're gonna be better off as a generalist. Even if it means I want to say, hey, I'm a math guy, or whatever. Like, sure, we all have these, you pick something you might want to, what I call, go deep on. But you're right in that the normal world that's kind of pushed in front of us or preached at us, like you're saying, in the career world, it really comes down to, you're right, like a job description almost goes in the face of being a generalist, because it gets very specific. I helped a company here, like, trying to find somebody, and they had sent me the JD, and I was like, I said, you're looking for a unicorn. Like, you've put that they must know this product, and they must, because it was a marketing thing, and you must. I'm like, you're basically wanting somebody that literally comes out of your org. You're not looking for anybody new. And you kind of tell these companies, like, guys, you should be creating a bigger surface area so that maybe you find a different sort of person or find more people. But I think the whole industry is kind of built around that, and it's a great way you put it, that the JD itself almost cuts the head off of generalism right from the get-go, right?
It does. And, there are some companies, and I think it's something, if you're a generalist, you have to be aware of this. There'll be a company who says, I am looking for an AI engineer, right? Because they're so clear about what they want, they will probably pay a lot of money for that, because there may be this one person who can do this job, and this is their going rate, and they have to pay for it.
They have to.
But with a generalist, it may not always be as clear. So you may not have as much bargaining power when it comes to, let's say you're offering your time as a consultant, for example. You may not have as much bargaining power if you're a generalist. But what I would say is there are a lot of companies who are at the earlier stage who know that they have an opportunity, but they're not sure exactly what skills they need. So imagine in our example, we were like, we want to enter into the Latin American market, right? And we were like, we want to bring our product Nuseir to Latin America. Now, at the day one, it's very much about figuring out where the opportunity is. Who are the right partners? What do we do here? This is a generalist approach. There is no one I can go and just say, this one person knows how to do all of these things. But then later on, we realized that we needed a salesperson who specialized in marketing and PR agencies in Mexico. This is a good example in our experience of when you need a generalist and when you need a specialist. So for generalists listening or watching, I would advise to look at the earlier stage of a company. It doesn't have to be a company at the beginning. It can be a company who's maybe expanding to a new region or market, because they will be a lot more open to a generalist to help them figure it out. And then once you are in that company, you can hire a specialist because you know where you're strong and where you're weak.
Yeah.
So I am not a marketer by background. If I need a marketer as in stage 2, that's when I hire the specialist.
Yeah.
So I think if you get in early, the generalist has the ability to become like the CEO or the general manager, and then shape the the specialists around that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be maybe a little bit more strategic about your career, but know that it also gives you that opportunity, because when you get more senior, actually it's funny, the specialists do well in the mid-level, then unless you're becoming the CPO, the CTO, it almost favors the generalist again later on.
Yeah.
So it's this interesting irony that you don't always have that advantage, but if you kind of figure it out, you can have an advantage at the later stage of your career.
And I think that some people, and I met lots of different types of, employees, people, friends, colleagues, some of them want to be specialists.
Yes.
They just want to get the job done.
And it's more certain, right?
It's more certain.
Yeah.
And some of the people doesn't like to take the risk, which is fine as well. So it's fine to be either a specialist or a generalist, but you need to think that generalist is fine. Yeah.
But bringing it back to content creation, this is one of my big realizations. So in the world of media and content, if you take maybe 15, 20 years ago and you were making a documentary, right? You would be a creative director. Your focus would only be on the creativity of it. And then you probably have an exec who was focused on the advertising, and you have the business side and everything. If you take a YouTuber today, the YouTuber is actually a generalist.
Totally.
Yeah.
They're script writing, they're shooting, they're editing, they're figuring out how to make money, they're booking the studio.
Which tile to use, which...
Correct.
Yeah.
Like you guys are generalists, both in your life and career, but also by being content creators. So I think we're in the era of generalists.
Yeah. And it's actually gave me the sense when I started to do my shorts, and I was thinking, hey, today I can do that. And it's led me to a question is, for your mindset, how creator look in 2024?
So I would say in the last 4 years, there's been a big shift in places like Singapore, where going back to that discussion when I first joined, people were like, what is this industry? Is this really an industry, or is this just a few thousand YouTubers? To every single entrepreneur I meet is now thinking about their personal brand and thinking about, should I be creating content? Then you have this whole kind of tension, which is that if I work for a big company, am I representing the company or am I representing myself? Which is an interesting topic.
Yeah.
So I think, what does it mean to be a creator in 2024? I think that we are in the era where people, consumers, fall in love with people and not just brands. Very rarely do people fall in love with just a company name. It happens, but it's rare. And I think that if you look at the examples I always look at is you look at, let's say, car companies, right? If you ask people like, who is the CEO of Tesla? Everyone can answer.
Yeah.
If you ask them, who is the CEO of Toyota?
I don't know.
Probably people don't know. So there's this big attachment to personality-driven marketing. And so I think being a creator in 2024 is the responsibility of actually employees, founders, CMOs, CEOs to understand that just as much as they have a role to play in building the company, they have a role to play in being the voice of the company and building kind of the distribution engine. And so whether it comes to sales, marketing, any opportunity, content needs to play a role, and authentic content, not just sort of, Super Bowl advertisements or similar.
Yeah, I think the struggles in big companies, and I'm taking myself back to an enterprises. You have these restrictions, in the communication department, what you should say, what you should not say, and it's not agile to do that. You can be, and I saw it personally myself, and I decided to do the videos. I don't need to ask permission anymore. So how we can shift the mindset of big companies for the creator mind that you just refer to?
So I think it depends on the industry, because some industries are heavily regulated. So for example, if you think about financial institutions and fintech, just one stupid thing said by an employee could actually could risk them losing their license,
Correct.
right? Or if you're a public company with the SEC, like this is a real challenge.
Correct.
What I would say though is actually you don't need, and this is where I think the mindset does need to change or can change, which is that companies are very much like used to being in control of the message. They say this is the centralized talking points, and every person in the company needs to repeat the message.
Correct.
When actually that's not authentic. And consumers are smart. If you go on LinkedIn, you will see that anyone who makes an ad in their content gets less views, less likes, less comments than someone who says something authentic.
It's canned. It looks canned.
It looks canned. Consumers know, right? They're like, this is an ad. I don't care.
17 people from that company all kind of said the same thing today.
Exactly. So it's not going to work as a marketing strategy. So I think that how do companies adapt? I think what companies need to do is they need to be clear of what's off limits. Rather than saying, this is what you can say this is what you can't say. So if you're a public company, you can't talk about our financial performance, for example, or upcoming partnerships. If you're a fintech, there may be certain things you're not allowed to talk about. But then everything else, there are hundreds or thousands of topics you can talk about, and you don't have to be on message, and you don't have to use this language, and you can talk about things that are not your work, right? Because that's relatable. And there are companies that are being very innovative around this. There are big companies. Even I read recently that Oracle is experimenting with training their employees on TikTok, right? Because so they're getting that it's needed. Right? Yeah, in the US. They're getting that it's needed. So they need to, I think, come up with a policy. I think have a clear framework of what's not allowed and then leave people to be creative to figure out what they want to say. And I think for the employee, my advice is do not ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, meaning that a lot of companies will tolerate it without you asking them. As soon as you ask them, they have to come to a decision.
Stay out of the bad areas.
Stay out of the areas. Start experimenting with content. Obviously, be careful with pushing the boundaries at the beginning. And then if you start getting traction, you may find that actually your company says, we want you to be an advocate for the company. And then it can be more integrated into your job, which is the ideal.
I love it. And I think, especially for big companies, when there is lots of employees, their voice can be here.
Yes.
Because now they're silent.
Makes a big difference.
And by the way, for sales, just to add very quickly, it's one of the best ways to get leads. As you said, I got leads from this, or you saying I got leads, right? Every salesperson out there, every SDR, every BDR, every enterprise salesperson should be creating content. I've seen some really good examples for people who should check online. There's a company called Beehive where they encourage their salespeople to make content to the company they're pitching to. So they're a newsletter company, and they were trying to get Nintendo to make a newsletter. The sales guy made a piece of content saying, hey, Nintendo, this is what your newsletter should be about. And he made a video, and they started tagging Nintendo. That's a great way to attract people's attention. Nice. So I think there's very innovative ways that salespeople can use content.
So a core theme in all this to me is storytelling.
Yes.
How are you guys teaching that at Nas? Because that's a big part of whether you're talking to the brands, because I know you guys talk to brands or you talk to people individually. It's all this stuff is about being a storyteller, or being a better version of a storyteller than you currently are. So how do you go about teaching people how to be a storyteller?
So I think people confuse with content one successful video, like some virality, with storytelling. Anyone can have a lucky break and go viral. You can jump on a trend, or you can do something that just goes viral. But to get consistent virality, you need storytelling. Now, to us, we have a storytelling method that we developed over the last 8 years. And a few examples of that is we believe in speaking to everyone rather than to a select group. So when we say, if you talk about a topic, does someone in India understand it? Does someone in America understand it? And does someone in London understand it? Right? What language are you using? Is the topic very relatable? So we focus a lot on simplicity, on relatability. We have it's like a golden rules of 3 of how to create your own story. But I think that what's important when it comes to your storytelling, whatever method you choose, is that you can, first of all, you can adapt it a lot as you go, but you need to be able to shape a story across your video or across your text. No matter what piece of content, text, video, image, there needs to be some story attached to it. Otherwise, you will not keep people engaged. And actually, every social media algorithm wants users to stay on the platform. So they always reward content that people stick with, that they read, that they watch. So storytelling is your way to increase retention.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's how I think about it. Now, is there one method? No. There are many different methods. You guys will have your method. We have our method. Our method does work very well for short form.
And you guys teach us in the academy? Is it part of your?
We teach us in the academy. So in the academy, we have a 5-month program called the Creator Accelerator. Yeah. And that is to teach people how to storytell, how to shoot, how to edit, how to make content across different platforms. Yeah. You know, some people say, oh, you know, I can go viral on TikTok. I can't go viral on Instagram. Our philosophy is that actually it's not about the edit. Like, that's a small thing. It's really about the idea. Yeah. If the idea is good, it will go viral across most platforms. Some will get more views than others. But if the idea is not good, it doesn't matter what editing tweak you do. It doesn't matter about what music you put in. It's just not a good idea. Yeah. And I think that when you, for those in the world of business, it's very much similar to product market fit. Yeah. You can make all the tweaks to your onboarding funnel of your product. But if people don't want to use your product,
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? Yeah. And that's like the same with content.
Fair. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and I think consistency is a big piece to it because, like you said, you're not. If you can design for virality, fine, but it's a lucky break most of the time, right?
Yeah.
But your consistency doesn't have to be a lucky break because and you'll find a home with the people that value that specific subject because you're always talking about that specific subject.
So the Nas Daily method that worked for us was, you're right, consistency was incredibly important. So we made daily videos. Yeah. It took 217 videos to go viral. Yeah. So imagine if we'd made content once a week. That would have taken, like 4 or 5 years to get viral, right? Yeah. Because we did it every day, it took less than a year. Yeah. The second thing on the storytelling was the format. We agreed on a 1-minute format. We stuck to 1 minute. Yeah. And it was storytelling within 1 minute. So giving yourself some sort of parameters really helps because you're not kind of thinking about, okay, how long should this be? What should this be? And the third thing for us was, very much deciding that, Nuseir, the founder, was not the topic. He was the presenter. So if you look at all the videos, yes, his face is on the videos, but actually he's always telling the story about other people. He never tells the story about himself. And he realized early on, he's like, I am the messenger. I am not the subject.
Message.
Yeah, I'm not the message. Other people like vloggers can often be the message, but you need to really make that decision because you need to be very interesting to being the message.
It's a tough hurdle.
And then I have like a contradiction with you need to be personal. So it's not always personal walks because Nuseir is actually speaking about other things, other people.
Yes.
But he personal them, maybe.
Yes.
So this
humanizes them. I think for us as well, it's been really important to talk about issues that don't always get attention of the mainstream media, but really resonate with a lot of people. So for example, business owners in Asia, often, like let's say in small villages or towns in Sri Lanka or in India or in Malaysia or in Indonesia, they may never make it onto CNN. But they have an inspirational story that resonates with millions of people because they're like, wow, that story could be in my village or could be in my town. That for us was something we identified early on in the content. So I think when it comes to, let's say someone's starting a podcast today, my advice to them is, yes, consistency will give you the skills of how to make content. But you need to be looking at like the feedback loop. You need to be looking at what do people resonate with and what do they not. It's not just about making 1,000 videos. Yeah. Why, if someone resonated with that video you made, why did they resonate with it? And you can see in the comments, you can maybe see what point did they stop watching. Maybe it's because that person you interviewed in that podcast is just like them or taps into a feeling or a topic that is not talked about enough, but everyone is thinking about. Yeah. And I think that is the formula for really building on your success and getting more views and more followers and more virality. So I think today, if you look at podcasting world, I think you're looking at like some of the topics. You're looking at, there's the whole like Silicon Valley world. They have their own podcast. They tap in something, but then you see the people who are countering that. Then you have the people who are talking about social issues, about society. You have people talking about elections, but these are all topics that there are a group of people who really care about it. And I think that is like the foundation to getting started.
Yeah, that's good advice.
I think we can go on and on.
That's the problem.
I love the conversation, and I think I learned a lot today.
No, I really enjoyed talking about it. Thank you for having me. I think the idea of being, just to wrap up, I think the idea of being a generalist, just because it's not talked about, it doesn't mean it's not happening. Yeah. Yeah. I think this role is only going to become bigger. So if you're thinking about it, if you think that's who you are, do not give up on it and continue. I think being a creator is only going to grow. Yeah. And I think if you wanted to get started, you don't have to make it a full-time job, but I think everyone should start experimenting.
Just got to do something.
Do something, you know? And I think finally, you know, in terms of Southeast Asia, Singapore, I think that, you know, like any region, it has its ups and downs. You know, the last few years has been a period of transition for Singapore, but I've never been more excited and optimistic about what's happening here. You know, not just in the traditional tech, you know, I think in things like AI, it's you know, very interesting things happening here. I think in wellness and longevity, you know, it's an area that we're really interested in. I'm seeing more and more happening here. So I think there's just going to be a ton more industries that are going to grow here. So for those thinking about coming here or building companies here, I also think there's never been a better time. So I'm excited.
I agree.
Excited as well. We always wrap with questions.
Everybody gets these. So these are
Everybody get it. Everybody get it. So if could go back to Alex 20 years old,
yes,
what would be you would telling him?
Great question. I think that I cared too much about what my first job would be. I was obsessed with getting the graduate program, the brand, you know, my parents were very, like every parent was saying, you know, you need to have something that's safe, you need something that, you know, gives you the skills. And I definitely think it helped. It wasn't a bad decision, but I underestimated how much you just learn by being surrounded with great people. So the risk of being just focused on the company is you have no idea if the people inside are great. So you can go into a company with a great brand with average people. And you know what? It's really draining.
It's true.
But you can go into a company that doesn't have a brand and may not be respected, but you're surrounded with great people. And I think that's where you learn the most. So I would focus, if I went back as 20, I'd focus on being surrounded by great people and less on the brand or name of the company.
Got it. It's good advice. So like get something out of it for yourself rather than just, oh, that brand, I should go work there, because you may not get anything out of it other than just the chance to work there.
Correct. They may give you the worst role, the worst projects. You could work with a small two-person startup, and they just give you a ton of responsibility and they let you shadow them.
But it's kind of a part of the educational industrial complex to kind of like shove you into those spots, right?
100%. And actually my brother-in-law he's just been interviewing for these like consulting jobs. And I looked at the interview process and I'm like, you're not interviewing him about how he's going to be successful in his career. You're just doing a box ticking exercise. How are you going to make a decision on anyone like that?
Because they want X. How many?
Correct. So as a 20-year-old, he's you know, he will define whether he feels he's successful based on whether he gets in. But to the 20-year-old self, I'd say ignore that. That has no indication of whether you're going to be a successful business person, a successful entrepreneur. So like it's like reject what society tells you, but focus more on how much you can learn, because you don't need the money at 20.
No,
you need the money when you have 3 kids, like all of us. That's when you need the money to pay for everything, so you can take a lot more risk.
Diapers and shoes now.
Love it. Love it.
Great. What do you do for staying in your own game around health, both mental and physical kind of health? Like, what's your regime?
So I've changed a lot around this. When I was in my 20s, I'm now 36. When I was in my 20s, I loved this idea of work hard, play hard. So, you know, I love socializing with everyone. You know, I drink alcohol. I do lots of fun stuff. And what I realized as my career progressed is that being in a successful company or role, it's like being an athlete. And if you take it, I'm a football fan. You know, Cristiano Ronaldo is not going to be as good as he is if he's not committed to every part of his life, his sleep, his health, what he eats. And I think in the world of business, it's exactly the same. You're going to be on your game when you think about all aspects of your life. And so the last 3 years, actually, I have learned from the people around me who've taught me the value of that. And I made a lot of changes. So I'm a lot more focused on fitness. I'm 3 months without having a drink.
Oh,
I think it's
cheers for that.
I don't know whether it will be forever, but I wanted to test and try it, and I feel much better. And then the one I'm not very good at is sleep. I think it's hard. If you work in Asia and you deal with global markets, it's very hard to get a good sleep pattern. But I do think that this makes you better at your job. And so I think if that would be my advice, is to focus on those things, and they compound. I didn't appreciate that compounding effect actually before.
It's good focus, and good luck with High Rocks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Good luck. Sounds fun.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. And last thing, share with us one thing that you are watching or reading or listening.
What am I watching, reading, or listening?
One thing.
I've been really interested about, 3-4 years ago, everyone was obsessed with taking VC money, including us. We took VC money and it's given us a great opportunity. But there's been this sort of counter movement over the last 2 to 3 years, which is that you can build a successful company without raising venture capital money. And, they call it, there's some people who talk about the boring businesses, and the other people talk about cash flow businesses and lifestyle businesses.
All these misnomers.
Correct. And I've been reading a lot about that from different content creators, different publications in the US and others. And I think that this area it's not new, really.
Yeah.
I mean, businesses before the tech wave were all like this. But I think that in Southeast Asia, we do have a reckoning, which is that there are a lot of businesses that were VC funded that were probably not VC businesses. And there's no exit point, right? And so I think that in this region, we need to get more comfortable with the idea that it's okay not to be a 1000x venture capital backed business, and you can have a really successful business. And we should take pride in that. It's not about how much money you raise. It's about strong fundamentals, profit, revenue. So I think this movement, I'd love to see this movement come to.
Is there a voice you listen to that's local that talks about this?
No, I listen to people
it's almost like counter, like I agree with you, and he knows me. I'm on.
While you were talking, I'm hearing Michael.
Yeah, I've been beating this drum for years, and even like when I'm doing like interviewing for cohorts for accelerators, I'm asking people like, why are you raising money? You actually have revenue growth, a little bit of profit. Like, you should just go back and build this thing without taking anybody's money. And by the way, that's okay. But there's not a movement that is telling people it's okay. Yeah. It's like it's like almost like a counter movement to say this, because you're like, ooh, the VC startup industrial complex, they don't want that message out there, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
I mean, there are people in the US, as you know, like Morning Brew talks a lot. Like, people in Morning Brew talk a lot about this. Cody Sanchez.
Right.
So in the US, it's a bigger movement. In this part of the world, it is not. I don't have an individual that I follow in this part of the world, but I'm hearing the rumblings from founders, and I think that the reason why it's not happened yet is there's still this sort of validation attached to someone wants to invest in you, therefore this business is good.
Yeah.
The people who are realizing it are the people who've gone through that cycle and are saying, I made decisions that may not have been the right decisions for me because of the pressure of having investors. And of course, if you invest, the investors absolutely have in their right to say, I want you to grow this amount, I want you to move faster, when maybe your product, your business takes longer because the market is new or you're not sure yet, you're figuring things out. So I think it's the people who've gone through it who say, once I move away from celebrating that I've raised X amount of money, that actually it wasn't right for me, are the people who, if they build their second or third company, are realizing, maybe I'll do this without funding. Yeah. Or maybe I'll take it at a later stage, as you said.
Yeah, and I think some of it comes from people that like maybe don't need it now. Yeah. It's easier for them to say it, which I get that, because now they have the comfort level where maybe it's not where you have a first timer or second, or they haven't made it yet. It's tougher for someone to enter into that mind stream because they're like, well, I need capital, right?
For sure. But actually, if you play it smart, I think a great example is C Group started with grants. Yeah. And actually, for those in Singapore, if you're Singaporean or a Singapore-based company, there are grants that you can consider. Then you don't give up equity. Yeah. I would always look, if I was starting my own company now, I would always look at ways that I could start, just like you said, without giving away money to investors, and then seeing what you can do, get as far as you can. And if you feel it's the right thing for you, then approach it. But yeah, I think that moment will happen, because if you look at the ecosystem here, there's been a lot of money that's been put into all different parts of Southeast Asia. There's no public market exit. No. There's no secondaries. So either they will never get a return, but they have investors. Investors have investors. Yeah. So eventually either they will not be able to build a new fund, or they'll want an exit point. So there has to be a day of reckoning around this. My prediction is it still may take a few years. But I think if we see successfully bootstrapped companies doing well here, probably from second-time, third-time founders, it will serve as the model, as I said, because they can, for others to follow.
I agree.
So hopefully it will be
That's a great
around this
subject.
room.
It's one we gotta
It's a good subject,
do
and
an episode on.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I feel I have so many things to say and contradicts you. And
Yeah, we have a
but
debate.
we had to stop.
Well, if you ever
Okay.
do a debate about this, happy to be one of the
Okay.
contestants.
We can do an episode debate.
I told you we need a
episode.
live event that's just this
Yeah.
subject because it's very contentious, but it's one needs more attention if you ask me.
For sure.
So.
Live event. Okay,
Sweet.
let's do.
Alex, fantastic.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you
It's been
so
fun.
much for coming.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
No problem.